Welcome to Beyond the Bottom Line. I'm your host, Bert Miller. We continue to have incredible guests on the show on Beyond the Bottom Line. We've had Chris Voss, Pete Carr from Bacardi, Peter Mondavi, yes, that Mondavi, to Ishveen Jolly, the CEO of OpenSponsorship.com. Well, today we're able to bring you another incredible voice in the world of work with our guest that is 30 years in the beverage industry with brands like Coors, Red Bull, Vitacoco, and most recently has served the CEO of Mast-Jägermeister U.S. Please welcome Jeff Popkin. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Bert, my good friend, great to be here. Super thrilled to be with you.
Well, it's good to have you here, man. That's awesome. So you were appointed the CEO of Mast-Jägermeister in 2015, right?
And yeah, it was actually November 30th, 2015.
Okay. Well, when I think about that, you quickly repositioned Jägermeister. You wasted no time. You created the shot of the NHL. You worked with Post Malone to lead a strategic investment in the Dwayne Johnson, better known as The Rock, in Teremana Tequila. So you've had a lot of change in what you've done at Jägermeister. Tell me a little bit about that and how interesting that was for you.
Yeah, it's so, I've always been a huge fan of the brand Jägermeister. I truly have, back to, even the college days, believe it or not. In Jägermeister, even my Red Bull, when I was at Red Bull 2009 to 2011, we were doing all kinds of stuff with Jaeger bombs when I was at Red Bull. And that's kind of the story of Jägermeister in the U.S. Jägermeister is this super complex brand, 56 botanicals, cold macerated, all in German oak over in Wolfenbüttel, Germany. Family owned. It used to be a vinegar plant back in the day. And Jägermeister was created, and Kurt Most kind of brought it to life and commercialized it. It started getting imported into the U.S. by Sidney Frank, who was the genius behind Grey Goose. He sold Grey Goose back in the early 2000s to Bacardi, $2 billion, something like that. So all kinds of Sidney Frank stories out there, and his genius serial entrepreneur. So he kind of introduced the whole cold Jägermeister through cold equipment and way back in the 70s. But what really just made Jägermeister explode here in the U.S. was Jäger Bomb, which was the Red Bull Jägermeister drink that, in 2008, 2009 kind of peaked when the Four Loko, caffeine and alcohol thing happened, and the FDA came out and said, had warnings around alcohol with caffeine. I was at Red Bull at the time. We took down all caffeinated mixed drinks with all Red Bull and vodka, Red Bull and Jägermeister. So Jägermeister started to decline then. 2008, 2009 started to decline. It was a perfect storm of the no alcohol, no caffeine, or caffeine alcohol mix. Started to really decline in 2008, which was its peak in the US, and declined every year. When I joined in 2015, it had been down every year since 2008 with just fallout from the Jaeger bomb. So at the time we were about 1.6 million 9-liter cases. And I'm happy to say, it was a massive restructuring and kind of rebranding. So we took Sidney Frank Import Company and made it Mast-Jägermeister U.S. to start to establish a U.S. identity for Jägermeister, more than just a Jaeger bomb, more than just what, some shot drink that you drink when you're at the bar and you're, celebrating great times with your friends, to really put some personality behind this German company, which really family owned, very heartfelt company in Germany. Global, their global route to market for Jägermeister, Bert, I've learned so much. 9 million cases of Jägermeister around the world. Literally, honestly, having seen Red Bull's route to market globally, I'd put Jägermeister up against it any day. Jägermeister's global route to market is super strong.
Well, look at what you've done. The brands you've worked for, if you think about Miller Coors and Vitacoco, what you did there, we'll talk about that in a bit. And of course, Red Bull, and now where you currently are. And I know you're going to transition a bit here with Mr. Fortune taking the CEO role in April. And I know you've worked with Mast-Jägermeister to make that happen. So that's terrific. When I think about Jägermeister, it just takes me back to the days when we used to go out as young people, and I can certainly relate to some of the stories you were sharing earlier. Now you were appointed, when you were appointed in 2015, now you've taken it over the last 6, 7 years. You've worked in the beverage industry for now 2 decades. What attracted you to beverage, and how'd you go, from where you are to where you are today?
Yeah, so I mean, Coors was my first foray into the beverage business. I used to be in the golf business, believe it or not. Like in college, I worked my way through golf, working at a golf course, or worked my way through college at a golf course. But a guy I used to give lessons to when I was an assistant pro got a job at Coors Ceramics and got me into the brewery. And I just fell in love. Grew up in Dallas drinking Coors Light. So I got into the brewery, got into distributorship, got into the beverage business. And honestly, Bert, it's like I always tell people when I'm trying to recruit people and I'm trying to tell them what the beverage business is like as compared to other job options that might be out there for a young person starting their career. It's like it's as close as you can be to being a professional athlete and not having to be athletic.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you get to compete, you can fall in love with what you're doing. You look at a brand like Coors Light, look at a brand like Red Bull, look at a brand like Vitacoco, look at a brand like Jägermeister, Terramana. These are all brands you can fall in love with. And when you fall in love with them, it starts to blur the lines between what you're doing at work and what you're doing on your own time, your personal time. And if you really integrate that and you get people's hearts really invested in what you're doing and they love the brand and what the brand stands for, then you find people that can compete. And then it's magic, if you have a brand that truly has the bones to do special stuff. And honestly, to go back to your question on Jägermeister, the thing I think that I'm most proud of at Jägermeister that we built over the last 6 years. Yeah, we rebuilt Jägermeister. An official shot of the NHL. Chris Petty, our chief marketing officer, is brilliant. By far, no offense to any other marketers I've ever worked with. They've all been really good at the brands I'm coming from. But Chris Petty at Jägermeister is the absolute best I've ever worked with. He's an artist. He was able to put together a rebranding of Jägermeister to get the awareness up, official shot of the NHL. The NHL consumer base is much like NASCAR, very loyal. They follow the brand, and once you're in with that group, man, their brand loyalty, they are on you, they love you, and it's been an excellent investment just from an awareness play. Just getting Jägermeister back out in the mainstream and in the mix, and so that really started the journey of the rehabilitation of Jägermeister. Then little occasional things like we stretched the occasion base of Jägermeister with something as simple and tactical as deer and beer. So that was basically introducing the idea to consumers that, hey, when you're having a beer, have a shot of Jägermeister and kick it up a notch, and you enjoy the session. The flavor of your beer comes out even more when you drink something that has 56 herbals, botanicals that wake up your taste buds, and then the beer starts to come to life in a little more. And
Yeah.
honestly, look at me, I'm an old guy cruising around in bars in Manhattan trying to buy people Jägermeister shots on a Tuesday night. And they're like, no, old guy, man, I got to go to work tomorrow. I'm not trying to get drunk. I'm having a chill night out. And I would be at batting, maybe 10% at trying to get tables to have a shot of Jägermeister with me. You come up with a deer and beer, it's 100%, man. Yeah, sure, man. I'll have a beer and a deer. Yeah, I'll do a Jägermeister shot. And you're sipping on it, you're shooting it, whatever you're doing. It makes it more sociable, and it stretched the occasion for us to get us, because the moderation trend with consumers is happening. There's not big night out like it used to be with you and I, Bert. The consumer today, it's moderation. They're going we have to go more occasions and less consumption across those occasions. So deer beer actually killed it for us. And then last 2 years, what we've done with The Rock really opened my eyes to the power of what a celebrity can do, especially an authentic celebrity that really, and this is the key, is really into it, in their bones and in their DNA. They drink your brand and they believe in it.
Yeah.
And that's what we found, and that's certainly Dwayne Johnson with Terramana. It's his baby. But Post Malone loves Jägermeister.
So Jeff, I mean, look, when I think about what you've just shared with us, what an amazing career, right? In terms of having the opportunity, your job is to go build brands. And especially when you're younger and you were in bars and restaurants and clubs, I'm sure, and you're building brands through people by those experiences. And what an incredible time that you had with all. And by the way, folks, when you think about it, the brands I mentioned earlier today, Coors, Vitacoco, Red Bull, and now the CEO of Mast-Jägermeister. Thinking about that, you've been very vocal, Jeff, and you talked about it a little bit earlier in our interview, really around the brand, in terms of preserving and revolutionizing the brand, in Sydney and what he did in bringing the brand to the United States. Why do you believe that establishing a brand is so important to the success of a beverage company or an adult beverage company?
I mean, it's proven the premium spirits business, and really the beer business is premiumizing right before our eyes. And to participate in that, you have to have a brand, and you have to have a brand that actually has a personality, as if it was sitting in the room with you as a person. What would Jägermeister do in this situation? And it has to be authentic. It has to be authentic in a way that's transparent. And it's hard work to do that because there's so many temptations to take the easy grab and do something that's out of the footprint of the brand that you're working on. But every time you do that, you dilute the soul of the brand a bit, and so it takes a lot of discipline to stay in the footprint of the brand you're working on. And really, to do that, Bert, I believe you got to believe in the brand. You got to really believe it has the bones to do great things.
Yeah, well, I mean, think about the energy you're bringing today. I mean, you're bringing energy to this podcast. I can only imagine what it's like out into the marketplace. So, you said you need to believe in a brand that in order to make it work for you. So, how do you make sure, from your perspective, that you're working and leading a brand that brings you joy? I mean, how have you made those decisions? And that's one question. The second question I'm going to follow up with, and I'll ask it again, is how, have you worked with a brand that, you haven't loved? And so I want to talk about that in a moment. But first, I want to talk about how you make sure that you're working for a brand that brings you joy.
Bert, every brand I've worked on, the brands that we've mentioned, those are the only brands I've worked on. I had one other stint where me and some partners, big Miller Coors guys, were buying distributors. The rest of my career has been all about brands. And if I can fall in love with the brand, and I kind of test out the proof of concept, then it's something that I know I can take joy in, because it's something that's close to me and something that I use. Every one of my brands that I've worked on are in my refrigerator today, and they have been. So it's, and the people is kind of the thing that makes it the most fun, because it's the most important step in the whole thing after you found a brand that you can fall in love with, is finding people who can also fall in love with that brand and have the basic, treat people well, like to have fun, real important on this one, like to compete. I love to find people who've played athletics at some level and like to compete and have that burning desire to compete, because those are the ones that are going to fight hard for every inch of your retail space, every inch of your brand in the conversation, whether it's national accounts or whatever it is. If I had to say one thing, it would be, the people that you find that make it fun. It's not necessarily the brand. The brand brings the love, but what really brings the joy is having a team of people that are on the journey with you. That, think about it. Think about any sports team you ever played on, or any group that you ever competed with, whether it was, I could have been a chess club. When you're sitting in the locker room, when you're sitting together talking about the things that are common between you, that you compete on, and the games that you won, and you remember when you did this, when the camaraderie, it's beautiful stuff. And you really can't get that in a lot of businesses. And I'm going to pick on pharmaceuticals. I mean, sitting in a doctor's office selling pharmaceuticals is, you got to have a living. Everybody's got to have a living, but it'd be tough to fall in love with that for me personally. So I feel like it's a luxury to do something that you really love to do.
No, it is. And when I think about the world of work in general, we're going to talk a little bit about how you built your teams. But if you think about the global GDP and the money that's being spent out there, Jeff, you have healthcare, you have digital, and you have consumer. Now, I don't know what the number is, but I'd say those three legs on the stool represent probably 80% plus of the global GDP in some form or fashion. And I think CPG, particularly beverage, represents the most fun. I mean, that's where the fun is had. That's where the lifestyle and experiences happen. So I want to ask you a question. Have you ever worked for a brand that you have not loved?
The honest answer to that is no, I haven't.
Good.
I haven't worked for a brand. I think it would be a hard thing to do for me. And that probably sounds maybe even a little bit arrogant. I don't mean it to sound arrogant. It's basically just something that to me, I've had opportunities to go to work for brands that were commercially. I told you about one before we started the podcast, and I just couldn't get myself to a place where can I love this? Is this brand really me? Does it speak to me? Am I going to drink this brand? Am I going to use this brand? And there's been a couple that commercially were already in the money when I received the offer and it was time to go, and I couldn't go, and I had to actually back out of it. It's just a principled thing with me that I know I'm at my best when I'm all in. And
you are all in, man. You absolutely are. You absolutely are all in, Jeff, and that's what I love about you. And think about all the brands that you do have. They're in your refrigerator. They're in your bar. And I love that you use the brands that you have been a part of and helped grow. And speaking of growth, I mean, you helped grow Vitacoco, I think, and don't quote me on the numbers, but I'm going to give some general numbers from 40 million to 200 million plus. You then went to Red Bull distribution as the CEO. At the time, it was about 200 million that you grew to $500 million.
I was actually at Red Bull before Vitacoco. That's how I met the Vitacoco guys. But yeah, Red Bull was acquiring other distributors. So Red Bull was taking back distribution and company-owned distribution. So some of that, those numbers sound super impressive. But Red Bull's organic growth at the time was like 20 to 25%. We were growing at crazy rates because we were absorbing other territories, and expanding distribution for company-owned asset. Red Bull's just, God, Bert, that brand is just dynamo. I don't think you could screw that brand up, if you tried to. It's just such a strong brand.
Well, Red Bull did have a good recruiter at one point in time that was putting some talent in there. Anyhow, I digress.
Yes.
I digress, man. But what, so think about the growth and what you've done at Mast-Jägermeister, especially working with the Rock and Terramana, and I really want to get into that in a second relative to that launch. But before I ask that question, I want to understand from you the maybe 2-3 key tenets that you have that you rely on growing the brands, because you have a repeated history of growing brands, not only growing them, but growing them significantly.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's as simple as, finding a brand that you think has the bones to perform, and then going all in and building a team around it that can get out and scale the brand and execute against what are the core tenets to the brand to be successful. Whether it's putting it in the right channels of distribution in front of the right customers, because you have to know who your brand speaks to, who's your consumer, to really put it in front of your consumers so they can respond. It's the people part of it is so important. It's a throwaway line because so many people say that people are important, but I will tell you, I say all the time, Bert, I'm in the people business. I've said it on every brand I've ever worked in. I know, Jeff, you're in the beverage business. You're selling energy drinks. No, it's the people who sell the brand. Once I know this brand has bones to perform and it has the liquid and it has the secret sauce, it's just about getting the people. So really, you can find brands that are ready to scale. You can find brands that have the bones to be exceptional. What's really hard to find is the people that can make it happen. Yeah. And that doesn't always mean, the people to make it happen doesn't always mean you're going to try to find the smartest person in the space, whatever subject matter expertise you're looking for. It has to fit the culture of the competitive nature of having each other's back, of not always trying to be the superstar, understanding what it really means to be a team player. And when you find that kind of balance where people pick each other up, and it's magic. And that's what makes the journey so much fun. And we built that at Jägermeister. I'm super happy. We got 160 employees at Jägermeister, and they live, eat, and breathe Jägermeister. They love it. They love what they do. We have fun. I always say we keep the air loose. Fun. The first time I was around Germans, the ownership, they hired me, and we had a big company meeting. I'm like, guys, the vision for how we want to operate here, we want to keep loose air. We never want the air to be stiff. We want everybody to speak their opinion. The more junior you are in the room, the more I want to hear from you, because you're closer to our target consumer. So everybody, loose air. If you have a thought, speak it, and let's all communicate. And they thought, so the Germans after the meeting, they're like, so yeah, who would have thought that our new CEO would be teaching everybody to be sloppy? And I'm like, I'm not talking about being sloppy, but to them, they were hearing loose air as sloppy, which is kind of funny. But that's one of my tenets also of, it's got to be loose air, man. We're casual about our work environment, but we're super intense about our results and how we compete, you know, and you don't have to wear a three-piece suit to be intense about your business. You can wear jeans, you can wear a t-shirt. In fact, at Jägermeister, we don't have, our dress code was dress in a way that inspires you. And so it's like, okay, that's kind of gimmicky. It's like, well, you know, really, why should we tell people how they have to dress when we can tell them dress however you want to dress? We've had, in my 6 years there, we've never sent anybody home. You know, it's something I really picked up on at Red Bull that I think is so cool. If people are comfortable, they're going to be at their best, I think. So
Yeah, that's interesting. It's very. By the way, folks, whoever's watching this, man, you got to take a look at Jeff. I mean, I think he's already had a couple of Red Bulls today, actually. But no, I've known Jeff for a while, and he brings this energy like this every single day. And now you understand why he's built some great teams, and and by building those great teams, he's been able to exponentially grow the brands that he's led. And so when you think about building your team, Jeff, what qualities do you look for when you're bringing people into an organization? So maybe give me your top two attributes. There's a lot of things, but what are the top two attributes that are just non-negotiable for you?
Value people and love to compete. You know, I think value people from a standpoint of you never want to hire somebody, you know, who thinks they're the smartest person in the room, or, you know, that's somebody who doesn't value people. You want to hire people who are smart, who understand things, who want to win, who they want to compete. But most importantly, and I put it at the top of the list, they value people. They value people in the journey that they're on, which makes you naturally inclusive, even before it was, you know, it was politically correct to be that way. You want people that are heart forward, that have empathy and value people. Because if you can start with that, that means they're going to listen. That means they're going to respect other people's opinions. And that means if you value and respect other people's opinions, you're going to build trust. And if you have trust, you can yell and scream at each other, and you're going to pressurize whatever idea you're talking about. And you're going to come out of the room in agreement, and you're going to respect each other still. And you're going to still have that kindred spirit that trust creates. So it's you know, yes. Are we going to find smart people? Yes. Are we going to find subject matter experts that can contribute? Yes. But that's the primary thing is, do you truly respect people? You know, and so I always, when I'm interviewing, I like to get 15 minutes of just getting people loose and comfortable, and you drop their guard and get rid of all the answers, you know, the interview answer questions like, what's your biggest weakness? I work too hard, you know, that kind of stuff. Of you get to where it's really natural, where you can see who they are truly, which is all trying to get at, do you value people?
Yeah, that's interesting. And so when I think about that and what you've done at Mast-Jägermeister it's just been fantastic. It really has. And I know that, so when I think about you, I think about partnerships and relationships and what you've done. And you've recently done a strategic partnership with Dwayne Johnson, as I mentioned earlier, better known as The Rock, and the Terramana tequila brand, which for those out there that are not aware of this, it is the single largest launch of a distilled spirit in the history of distilled spirits. And so I'd like you to talk a little bit about that and the evolution of that partnership and how you brought that together and brought that to Mast-Jägermeister.
Well, you know, that was quite the ride. And it all started in 2000. So I joined Jägermeister in November of 15, and it was all about stabilizing the brand, getting it growing again, getting the distribution network ironed out. And so we went all in with Southern Glazers. I'm a big fan of Wayne, and at the time it was Brad Vassar, and now Gene and Mark Chaplin. You know, they're more of they're truly a family distributor feel. Not that the others aren't. R&DC is a great operation. So is Breakthrough, Charlie Marinoff, and those guys. But Southern just had a bigger footprint and able to scale us. And so we thought of, rather than being as a single brand company with just Jägermeister, we needed to have a voice inside of our distribution network. And to get that voice, we made the decision to consolidate all of our volume, or 88% of our volume, into Southern, to try to get, you know, a voice and get some really a share of mind inside the Southern Glazers house. So we had a top to top in June of 19, and I mentioned to Wayne that we're ready now, man. We are stabilized. Jägermeister's on the way up. We're getting some organic growth. We're ready to bring on a brand. So keep your eye open. If you see brands out there that you think could benefit from scale, we're 160 people and we just have one brand. We can put some muscle behind it and we can do it. August of 19, he calls me. I'm sitting in a control state meeting in Detroit. And of course it's Wayne. So I jump out and answer the call. And he says, "Hey, I got a brand for you. I got this guy named Ken Austin. He's going to call you." And so, sure, Ken calls me like 3 seconds later. Cut to the chase here. I'm in Detroit. Ken says, "Where are you?" I say, "Detroit." He said, "I'll be there in an hour." He flew into Detroit airport, and we talked for 3 hours that day. And I talked to him every day from that point forward until we signed our deal in December of 2019. It was a really interesting, intense experience. We launched Terramana, and in that process of that time, we met with Dwayne Johnson 2 or 3 times. And Danny Garcia and his team. Danny Garcia is actually his ex-wife and business manager on a lot of his, super intelligent, super sharp, and very intense. But I will tell you, every time I met with Dwayne Johnson, no cell phones on the table, no big time, no, I got to step out and take 2 to 3 hours of intense, he's sitting there, he's 6'5" and big as a house. And he's like, he had to take a break about every hour to go, feed protein to his muscles. And then we'd come back. Go to seriously. He would have these bold. He's just a super intense and really powerful, person in terms of his overall presence, but very intense about his business. And Terramana is his baby. He's involved in everything: the liquid, the packaging, going down to the distillery and partnering with the Lopez family, which is the distillery in Jalisco that we used. And Ken and his partner Jenna Fagnon, they do a terrific job, very strategic on the packaging, marketing. And with Jägermeister, we were the global distribution partner exclusive. And so we executed in the sales end of it. Launched it with a 100,000 case plan, which in spirits would have been a big, especially with COVID. It was launched in 2020. We did 320. We did 320,000 on a 100,000 plan. Price position is Tito's of tequila, so that's excellent. All 100% blue agave, Highlands agave, which is super smooth. So it's a great liquid. So it's just pretty much the secret to Terramana: great price point, great liquid, all 100% blue agave, super smooth. And Dwayne Johnson, the engine of Dwayne Johnson on Instagram is pretty nice to have.
Well, I don't think he does anything 50%. So you have it. In terms of having an influencer behind a brand, that's about as good an influencer as you're ever going to have. By the way, year 2, you guys threw up what, 660,000
almost
cases?
650.
650, yeah.
A million this year if we can make it. Tequila's booming. It just passed rum, passed rum to be the number 3 category in all spirits.
Absolutely amazing. By the way, look, folks, you get to see Jeff. He gets to hang out with Post Malone and The Rock. How bad can it be? But
they wouldn't recognize me in a room of 5 people today. I realize these guys are so big, mega stars, and they're really genuine. Not to tell, they super genuine. Both. Post Malone's absolute sweetheart of a guy. Actually from Texas. I'm down here in Dallas, Texas, as I speak to you. He went to a high school not too far from where I'm sitting.
That's incredible. So let's talk a little bit about you. You've done what you've done at Mast-Jägermeister for the last 6+ years. And now you've found your succession that rolls in on April 1. And so at the end of March becomes a new opportunity for Jeff Popkin. What's next for you after Mast-Jägermeister, Jeff?
My decision to leave was really a couple of things. First, as I'm sitting around looking at the team we built, I talked about Chris Petty, our chief marketing officer. He's been with me 5 years. I also hired Joe Fortune. At the time, I hired him from Diageo to be our CFO. He's been with me 5 years. Mike Rudy, who is our general counsel, who was with Sidney Frank for 10 years before. He played soccer at Brown. These 3 guys, dynamos. I'm looking around at my staff meetings, and I got Chris Petty. And I always told him, like when I interviewed with the Jägermeister guys, I was telling them, I'm a revenue and people guy. I believe marketing is an art form, and I need to trust my marketer, and I need to know. I don't want to be standing with my CMO and looking over their shoulder and going, use a little more yellow, use a little more red, I just want to have complete trust. And so they gave me, I got to go out and find the exact right person, and it was Chris Petty. And God, he did beautiful stuff. Joe Fortune, who's the CFO, one of the most dynamic people I've ever worked with. His mind is so sharp and so quick. And I look at Mike Rudy, who's down there, who's one of the best people persons I've worked with. We made him recently I made him the chief people officer and general counsel. Sadly, we had the lady who was running our HR when I got in there, Florence Pramberger, who had experience with Beam. She passed away during COVID. Super sad. I love that woman. She could see, I used to tell her she could see people's souls. I'd bring her in as a final check on interviewing somebody, and she could sit 30 minutes with somebody and see their soul, truly. But so Mike Rudy took that over. But I honestly, of the 2 data points that I knew it was time for me to go find another journey, which I love the journey. I do believe life is about the journeys. Is that I'm looking at the talent in the room, and they're ready to grow. They're ready to do it. And I look at Joe, who I'd made him our chief commercial officer 2 years ago, just with the express, point to develop him to be my successor. So he's brilliant CFO, very big charisma, big presence, super dynamic guy. To put him in the chief commercial officer role the last 2 years, 2.5 years, would be perfect to get him ready to do my job. Mike Rudy handles all the legislative stuff, our general counsel. Obviously, a lot of upside for what he's going to do. I'm sitting there going, what am I doing here? I'm getting this itch and this feel. I'm 57 years old. I want to do one more, strong run here before I hang it up and go coach high school football in Texas, or go, coach golf and high school football. Hopefully would be my dream retirement job, like when I'm 65 or whatever. But I want to do one more run, one more experience of building a team and doing something. And these guys are all ready to grow, ready to go do it. So those are the 2 data points, man. I got talent inside of US that is bursting at the seams, ready to run, and I don't want to stand in their way. So it was it was a good time to do it. And the company's in a great place, Bert, with Terramana coming in as the second brand, with Jägermeister starting to have organic growth. Everything is set.
Well, what a terrific career, man, that you've run, and you keep stacking them up, Jeff. And I think about the brands you've stacked up, as I've mentioned earlier, and then of course the fun brands you've been part of. I mean, Sidney Frank, for those that have not done a history and looked back at Sidney and his life story and how Sidney Frank came to be and the company, that is an amazing, cool story. That then led into Mast-Jägermeister, that, as he brought that over. And then, of course, Grey Goose. And you mentioned earlier, Grey Goose sold to Bacardi for $2 billion.
Yeah, thank you. Back then, and that was in the early 2000s. Yeah. That'd be $3.5 billion today.
Every bit of it. Yeah. I mean, you're talking about maybe 3 SKUs, basically. At that time, one flavor, just the original. $2 billion. Incredible. And then the Jägermeister and the experience and lifestyle, the brands that you've worked with have been fantastic. And then finally, you want to go do one more thing. And then I love the last part. You're going to go coach high school football when you're about 65 years old in the state of Texas, where football is king. So that's an amazing, great story.
I'm a sports junkie. I know with my career, I've worked hard to develop more analogies. So I tend to use sports analogies, but I've now incorporated a ton of movie analogies. But football is just a beautiful sport. And I'm a big golfer as well, obviously, as I talked about earlier. So yeah, those are the things in my horizon, hopefully before the clock runs out. Well, I have an opportunity to do that.
Well, Jeff Popkin, a ton of passion, great career, a ton of energy. Thank you for bringing it, Jeff. That's awesome. This is Beyond the Bottom Line, and I'm your host, Bert Miller. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Bert. My pleasure.